Welcome, Ben. It's a great privilege to have you here at the Data Science Conference Europe, and I do hope you're enjoying your experience so far. So you have a rather interesting background for data science. You came from a chemical engineering background, and now you have more than 16 years of experience in machine learning. So could you go a bit into your development path from chemical engineering to AI?
Yeah, I think careers are funny. They're a random walk for most people, and if you wanted to be critical, you'd find out that it's by chance. So I really loved math, and my dad's a doctor, and so to satisfy my math interest and the prereqs to go to medical school, I found chemical engineering. But then I was introduced to programming. I started a e-commerce company, learned LAMP stack, and I was introduced to computer vision and high performance computing. And so even though I've had a long career in AI, I like to joke that I'm not an AI nerd, I'm a high performance computing nerd. So I like really big computers to be working hard, GPUs, etc. But I've also spent the last couple of years in marketing. So I encourage people to change careers because you don't know what you will like until you run into it.
Quite a breadth of experience there. And one of your positions was Chief AI Evangelist at Data Robot. So could you explain to us what Chief AI Evangelist and Strategist entails?
Yeah, so an evangelist is typically someone who they speak, they communicate, they advocate for the product and for the company. You have different types of data scientists. Many of them tend to be introverted. They're not necessarily customer facing. And then you have data scientists that are great with customers. They can have a conversation and they can communicate at a level that's appropriate for the audience, which can be very difficult with executives because often the communication is not brought to the level that it needs to be. Evangelists and strategists can be interchangeable. I think for me personally, speaking openly, I have a more technical background. I've worked at a hedge fund as a quant. I was the chief data scientist at HireVue, which is a Sequoia company. We had a team of physicists, and I delivered 14 patents with that team. And so sometimes being an evangelist is seen as being toothless. There's a lot of people that evangelize and say a lot of words, but they don't do a lot of things. And so the strategist component, I want to do both. So I want to keep my teeth sharp, and I want to make sure that I'm engaged in the core technologies, but also thinking about strategy. One last thought there is I think strategy is really important. What is the strategy that you're going to have for the next 3 years? And it's even better if it's emotional and if it's communicated well through storytelling. I think there's some power that happens there, the intersection of innovation and storytelling.
Yeah, that is quite, I think, important. And your talk here at the conference was Building the Future, a founder's perspective. So could you elaborate a little bit more about what you learned from building and then selling your own AI company?
The biggest thing I learned was value. I remember I had an experience with my startup where I'm in a room and I'm selling to a large insurance company. There's 3 levels of management in the room. So you have the right people in the room. We have a fantastic presentation, brilliantly designed, and on the final slide I show pricing. And we're asking for $250,000 a year on a SaaS contract, and I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I'm looking around the room, trying to gauge the audience. Did we ask too much? Did we not ask enough? And that interaction now is silly. Why would I feel uncomfortable? Well, the reason I feel uncomfortable is because I'm not confident that they will realize a multiple of value on that purchase because I'm leaving them up to the platform. So after selling AI for the last couple of years around the world, when you're selling to executives, if the value's there, it doesn't matter what the price is. So to ask an executive for a very large number, if everyone in the room truly believes they will realize a 10x multiplier, then it's not an awkward conversation. So communicating with executives, having empathy for them, but also the urgency of, I think sometimes being an employee, when I was an employee before, things did not feel urgent. You go to work, you have good culture, you have a kitchen with fun food and snacks, and you have a pool table and a foosball table, and you expect things. And on the startup side, the market expects things, and the market doesn't care if your family's sick. The market can be quite brutal, and because of that, you have to have urgency. Urgency with strategy, which is an interesting tension. There's tension between those two extremes. So there's so many lessons you learn in a startup, and they can be quite painful, which is good.
Yeah.
It means you remember them.
Yeah, that's true. And you talked a bit more about the urgency in the markets, but what would be advice that you would give for young and promising entrepreneurs that are just starting out, that have an idea for AI startup? What would you tell yourself if you were just starting out?
Yeah, there's some common pitfalls that they run into. For technical founders, I see a lot of times they focus on the technology. So they're building something very sophisticated, very complicated, that would be very impressive to their peers, but they haven't thought about how they would sell that to an executive audience. And so I call these individuals technophiles, and I relate to that. So understanding their buyer and the elevator pitch, there's common things that are said from VCs that advise and invest in these startups: product market fit, focus on a single vertical. I have a lot more respect for some of those perspectives. When I was a young entrepreneur, I had a level of arrogance that they don't know what they're talking about. I know AI and I know the market, and I realized later that they definitely knew what they were talking about. If I had a word of advice, one of the things I like to say to students or new people that are thinking of being an entrepreneur, you need to find an idea that is so big that you're willing to fail. And I define both of those things. So by failure, I mean foreclose on your home, ruin your credit, have your net worth go to zero, where now you're asking for favors. And that kind of scares these young students. And then I go to the idea that's so big. You need to have an idea that's so big, not so big for me, not so big for people in the room, your professors, your parents, so big for you. And so if the idea is not so big that you're willing to risk that, then you need to keep thinking about that idea. Because when you find that idea that is so big, the most successful entrepreneurs I've seen, nothing matters besides that idea. And that is exactly what you need when you have, guaranteed you will have terrible days with a startup. Contracts that go sideways, employees you have to fire, things that aren't working well, things that are unexpected, angry customers, etc. And so you need that North Star.
And what are your future plans?
So I'm really, it was announced yesterday that I've joined Dataiku. I'm very excited to join that company. I'm excited to help them as they scale up. I'm sure I'll be doing that for several years. It's always hard to know what you're going to do in the future. When I resigned from DataRobot in July, a lot of people were expecting me to go and do another startup. It's better if you're a second-time founder. Investors like that because it means you'll listen, or you have a level of respect for the lessons of the market. Sometimes first-time founders they're a little arrogant and uncoachable, which I definitely was. So eventually I see myself going and doing another startup, but I could imagine myself working for a venture capital group where I'm investing and advising startups. It's interesting. Really the bigger theme is how fast do you want to run on the treadmill? Because sometimes if you get off the freeway, you could advise a basket of startups. It's really not that stressful. It's stressful for the startups, but it's not stressful for you. And I think for me, I want that stress. But people change. Mm-hmm. So 5 or 10 years from now, I've got 3 young kids. Maybe I will have different priorities. But right now, the opportunity to provide meaningful value in AI that changes lives for good in healthcare, it drives me. It's very, very motivating. And I think that'll be a theme that I will continue to have.
Sounds quite exciting. And to cap off the interview, what is your main takeaway from Data Science Conference so far? And what would be your one future recommendation for future attendees?
My main takeaway, I've been very impressed. Fantastic turnout, great speakers. The other people I've been interacting with are fantastic. I think if I had to, the hope is. The hope for things to improve, the hope is things grow, they get bigger. And so my hope in the next couple of years is this conference becomes even larger, where they need a larger venue, they bring in even more sponsors, bigger companies. But ultimately, the success of a conference is determined by the value of the attendees. And so for that to increase, there And what is the value? The value can be inspiration, challenging perspective, filling knowledge gaps, and networking. And if that is really valuable for the attendees, then this conference it's a great conference, but it'll just continue to grow to new levels.
Yeah. Thank you for the interview. Thank you for the talk, and I do hope you enjoy your experience so far, and that you continue to do so.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. First time to Serbia. My wife and I have loved it, and we would look forward to coming back.
Yeah, great. And good luck in the future as well with the Data IQ.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome to Data Science Conference Europe. My name is Ben Taylor. I'm the Chief AI Strategist of Data IQ, and let's change the world through data.